Hey folks, good morning. So I'm sitting here working on this motor, and I made this fan blade to go on here, a cooling fan. This is my homemade rotor for this magnetic motor. This is the magnetic motor open source. For those who are not familiar with what I'm doing, just please watch my other videos. And if you're interested in this sort of thing, please click like and subscribe, and you can find me on Patreon. Just look for Inventor John Gay is my username on Patreon. It's not Sunsaver. It's just it's Inventor John Gay. It's my real name. But Sunsaver was from the Nature's Hippie House forum that I used to be on a long time ago. I used to write on there a lot, and some other places. But this has a pretty stiff angle of attack on here, and it's just a little homemade fan that I made out of some flashing, and I JB welded it on there. And I should get a sponsorship from them. I use JB Weld quite a lot, and I'm always singing their praises. But it works really well. It has ferrous material. It has like particles of iron ground up in there, so it's an epoxy for these magnetic motors and stuff. And it will grab on to hold of the magnets, and it is a ferrofluid, so the JB Weld is actually attracted to magnets. And that can cause you some difficulties, but once you get, like I said, I could go into a whole lecture about how to use JB Weld for homemade motors. It's very effective, and yeah, I would love to get some sort of sponsorship, or just get free JB Weld. I've spent so much money on JB Weld. If I could just get some free samples, for plugging their product. Anyways, shout out to JB Weld. I think they're based in Texas, which is not too far from where I am, here in Louisiana. I'm about a mile down the road from the mountain man, y'all. There's a famous Duck Dynasty people that live right up the road. Everybody around here we love our Duck Dynasty neighbors that live down the road. But what I do is build these magnetic motors. I have this commutator here. My friend Stefan in Germany, we were talking about, adding a Tesla coil. Well, this is actually a Tesla coil on here. And we're using the Joe Newman effect to get basically free energy. Basically, most all of the torque of this high torque motor is coming from the magnets themselves. Whatever pounds of force these high powered neodymium magnets have, that's where I'm getting all that torque from, because there's virtually zero current going through this wire. It's a very thin wire, and it's extremely long, so the resistance of this wire is astronomical. The actual current going across through that resistor, according to Ohm's law, just simply cannot be very much current at all. And so any meter you put on there hasn't really been able to do anything, except it just kind of fries, or it just sits there and goes back and forth. Looks like it's not even turning. I've seen other videos where people were just sort of like, the meter's not even turning, but they got all these lights going. And so it's really kind of just a type of free energy in a way, maybe. It's certainly not doing anything to the meter, so you can't really say they're cheating the meter if they're not actually like breaking the seal and shorting around inside. If you're not tampering with the meter, everything you're doing is on the other side of the meter, so you're not cheating the meter. You're getting free electricity from somewhere. It's 0-point energy, or it's coming from the nuclear force that's in the magnets themselves. This is what Joe Newman was saying. It's magnet power, but it's probably just actually low energy nuclear reactions. And the reason it happens is because of you're creating an imbalance in the net zero force of vacuum energy, or the Casimir force that's in balance. It's just a probabilistic functions of reality. They're constantly in balance. But if you bring really two small surfaces together, very close together, then you create an imbalance, because you're blocking out all but that one little frequency. That's sort of how a radio receiver works, in a way, because you create a resonant trap that blocks out every other frequency except that one frequency that can pass through that. Whatever that little notch filter is, what we call this in electronics, is a notch filter. Okay, so I'm not building a notch filter here, but what we're doing is we're spinning a magnetic field, and we're compressing electrons or we're creating a inertia against this probabilistic, in other words, it's the electrons want to go in one direction and you're forcing them to go in another direction. You're creating an inertial G-force on there. And so that's just one theory, is that these G-forces are actually Casimir forces. They're creating, causing electrons to get larger, or there's, virtual particles are coming in. There's a lot of different theories on that sort of thing, where low energy nuclear reactions. There's a guy talking about this hydrinos, come up with his own name of a particle. Now, I'm not going to invent a name of a particle and try to call it the gay particle, okay? My last name's Gay. We don't really need a bunch of gay particles going around, And, but, hey, again, too, I don't want to get attacked by Joe from the Carolinas. I'll know I've made it big time if I do get insulted by Joe from the Carolinas with my chalkboard. He's like, don't be trying to set up a teacher-student relationship with me. So anyways, I'm not going to lecture anybody, and I'm not going to judge anybody. I'm not going to set up a teacher-student relationship. But some people might be interested in my theories, my alternative physics theories, and some people might be curious to know, hey, this guy was building a home computer when he was 12 years old, which, not to be boasting, but that just indicates that I'm an unusual person for sure. And they call me the crazy bike guy. But hey, being insane seems to be working pretty good for me, and I'm able to survive on my insanity, even though they threw me under a bus and won't let me get on my disability and won't let me have a job. A lot of other things happening, but that's what, when you live in a country that supports torture, you can't really expect them to just be all sweet and lovey-dovey to you all the time. So anyways, but back to this motor. And enough about me, the crazy bike guy. I do love my country, they just don't love me. But what we're going to try to do is use this fan blade and not this commutator. Just the commutator happens to fit on here, and it's got 12 segments. So at 1800 RPMs, I forgot to even try to look that up. 1800 times 12 would be what, 126,000 maybe? I don't know. Anyways, so yeah, if we get like 126 kilocycle signal, then we can drive that into a Tesla coil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I was shorting across here, this is like a center tap. So I'll take the center tap and short it, actually connect it to the fan. And so the fan, what the fan will do though is I'll short the end of this coil or short the end of the coil that way. So what I'll be doing is I'll be creating a direct electrical short across this inductive time delay on that half of the coil. So it'll be like a wormhole, like a time tunnel. The electricity, the current will go through there instantly, but there's going to be a huge lag or time delay in the current build up through this large inductance to the center point, and vice versa over here. And so the idea is we want to set it up to where it'll short to this side, then short to that side, short to this side, and short to that side. Now meanwhile, we've got an alternating current that's trying to go back and forth through here, and we're just periodically giving it a quicker loop on that side, and then we're going to give it a quicker loop on this side. So we're creating these little wormholes on either side. And but what I found though is, once the field is set up, that shorting this out, it didn't affect the speed of the motor, it didn't change the torque or anything. It just created a little high voltage back EMF arc across there. And I could feel the hair on the back of my hand standing up from the high voltage, but it didn't seem to affect the speed or slow the motor at all, because again, it's just a very short temporary arcing across there. So in other words, this commutator is set up to have maximum on, like it's on all time. There's very low, the off time, duty cycle of the off time is very small. it just goes from one segment instantly to the next. There's just a very paper thin insulator between each of my segments on my motor commutator. So there's a very short off duty cycle. Now I want the opposite here. I want it to be off pretty much all the time and just periodically kind of hit it and pulse it and give it a little spark. Again, give it a little time short across here where the current can just jump across that inductive time delay and go instantly to the center tap, or have it come instantly from the other side. So meanwhile, there's alternating current that's applied alternating current, and the motor itself is going to be self-commutating a secondary alternating current. So we should get either some constructive interference, which means it could help speed the motor up somehow, or we could just build up a secondary voltage output. Again, that's your free energy over unity. Or we might get destructive interference. In other words, it starts to slow the motor down and it starts heating it up, and or starts drawing more current from the applied AC. And of course, this is grid power that neighbors let me borrow, because most all of my power here is solar powered. And right now it's not working. It's been raining for like 40 days and 40 nights. We've had nothing but rain here. It's been very cold and depressing, and yeah, like I'm depressed. All my friends are depressed. So we're just hoping it warms up and the sun comes back eventually. And anyhow, but just wanted to show you guys what I was doing. For all my followers out there that are interested, well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this fan, this cooling fan. Like I said, this has a really high rate of attack on here, and I'm kind of proud of it. I think it looks nice. Turned out pretty good for just a homemade fan. I just used some scissors, some just cheap scissors from Dollar General, and cut this out of some galvanized tin flashing. And that could probably cut me pretty good if I stick my finger on there. A friend of mine stuck her finger in her fan the other day and almost cut her finger off. But she did that when she at her house, and her cooling fan over her stove. The cover was gone. She stuck her hand up there and almost cut her finger off. Poor thing. But so I'm hopefully not going to cut my finger off messing with this. But also, if this really works to cool it, we'll see. That'll prove that this is a high torque motor. Another thing we said we're going to do also, I have to put a starter on here, because if you see in my other videos, I have to give this a hand crank to get it up to synchronous speed. So if I put like a ripcord, I can just wrap it on there and then pull it, and give it a crank like you crank a lawnmower, and then that will get it up to synchronous speed. And so then it'll be just running on the magnet power, like Joe Newman said, or over unity or whatever. And also I was going to put like a pony brake, is what Stefan suggested, that I put a pony brake so I can measure. I'll put a spring, and I'll use a measured weight. I've got a set of calibrated weights for a precision scale that are measured in kilograms. So I can do a kilogram scale and just see if I can create and calibrate my own dynamometer and come up with some measure of torque, and then I'll just like compare that to the magnets themselves, or how much actual current. That's another thing we really need to do, is try to come up with some way of saying, like I said, I don't know if it really isn't actually drawing a measurable current to speak of. It's anything you put on there is just going to sort of vibrate back and forth. Or I think we said a scope probe is really going to be the only way, an inductive probe, and put it on the scope, and we'll just have to like calculate it from there. Or if we had really the right sort of equipment, we could use a computer and really do a better analysis with a computer. Let the computer look at it and analyze the signal, and we could kind of calculate. But meanwhile, I just got an old time. I got a 20-year-old oscilloscope that still works pretty good. Maybe I'll be able to get that cranked up one of these days and do some kind of measurements for the current input. But just based on Ohm's law alone, that this is an extremely long wire that's very, very thin. Like 24 gauge wire maybe, or something, or 20 is probably no more higher than that. It's probably like 28 gauge wire maybe. Pretty thin wire. And very, very long. I don't know how many feet I went on here. It's like, jeez, it could be a quarter mile, half a mile or more wire. I wrapped a lot of wire on there, so it just can't be hardly any current. And I actually started losing. I went over the threshold to where I started losing torque because I was actually cutting the strength of the magnetic field at that point. So there's a threshold crossover where you reduce the current so much and you increase the field so much. And I talked about that too in another video, but I'll explain all of that in a book that I'm starting on now, and just sort of been doing the outline for a book on all these things. But that in particular is just a discussion of one thing alone. The Newman effect is something that's not my invention. It's something that Joe Newman discovered, and I've analyzed it and feel confident that I know what it is. Although I don't really have a good we don't have any good atomic theories. Quantum mechanics is just sort of a temporary patch for what's going on to replace the old atomic theory that just does not work. Electricity is not it's a non-Newtonian fluid. It's not, these things do not behave like traditional fluid thermodynamics and fluid mechanics. Quantum mechanics is totally different. Electricity just simply doesn't behave the way we used to think it does. You can't treat it like it's water in a pipe and things like that. Those analogies are just very inaccurate. They're good for beginners to think about. You can think of the voltage as the water pressure, and you can think of the current as the speed of the fluid going through there. But there's no fluid going through there. What you're measuring is something entirely different, and time is involved, which is something we can't, as humans, we can't really even comprehend. We know that time exists, but we can't really travel through it. We can't go back and observe it, at least yet. No one's actually built a time machine yet. I'm not saying that it's impossible to build a time machine either. I've actually been criticized for suggesting that time travel may be possible if we have a holographic universe and we're doing these things with electricity that do behave like wormholes. Then you might assume that at some higher level that it would be possible to create either a wormhole or a bubble that's outside of the vacuum field of energy and or time, basically the time pressure of the quantum 4D field. So if you could make a bubble in this field and then you could propel against it, theoretically you could travel at any speed in excess of the speed of light, and then you would literally be traveling through time, or not really through time, you'd be traveling across it or outside of time. So you could just travel to different places in the universe and observe from outside of it. That's another problem with time travel. Anyways, enough with time travel paradoxes. I don't want to get off into that. Let's just talk about the physics of electricity and this free energy with the magnet power. So with almost no current going through here, and we still have this high torque, and the speed doesn't slow down or anything, so we know that we're just locked in the synchronous phase, and all the power is coming from the magnets themselves because they're just matching the information. They're not pulling power. We put a load on there, it doesn't draw more current like they say. Oh, your motor has to draw more current like a transformer is going to. No, this is not a transformer. They're totally isolated. The magnetic field and the electric fields are totally isolated and separated from each other because of the way I designed the field geometry. And I keep saying this. I argued with people that, I've got a degree in electrical engineering, so this means I understand everything in physics. No, sorry dude, you're not God. Only God understands everything in physics. And you don't control reality. Just because you don't want free energy to exist doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You know, you don't, just because you want to be alone doesn't mean that the UFOs are not real. E.T. go home. Well, you know, you can't make E.T. go home. So, anyways, I'm sorry if that burst anybody's bubble to know that free energy is real and it's being suppressed. But hey, you're doing it to yourself. You're the one suppressing it. So, anyways, just wanted to say thanks for watching.